Imagine standing at the window of a penthouse that glows like a gold box over Central Park and seeing your 5-year-old daughter, the same child who hadn't smiled or spoken since the day her mother died on that same sidewalk, laugh and wave animatedly at an old woman picking cans on the street. Marcus Hale nearly had a heart attack when he saw it. He barreled down the stairs, stumbling on the marble, his chest pounding, because for the first time in years of absolute silence, his little girl, Ava, looked alive. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in people who still step up when the world turns away, take a moment to like, comment, and share this video. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what you're about to see will restore your faith in humanity. We'd love to know, where are you watching from? Comment below with your country and region, and let us celebrate the kindness that connects us all. Now, let's begin. Marcus looked like a man who had it all. Billionaire tech investor. A townhouse on the Upper East Side. Cars, art, a life built in headlines. But no headline could describe the hollow he carried since the day his wife, Sophia, had been struck and killed outside their building. The house had turned into a luxurious tomb, empty rooms, carved-out laughter, and a little girl of 5 who simply shut down. Marcus had exhausted every avenue. Specialists from Manhattan to Boston, neurologists, pediatric psychologists, speech therapists, even folk healers his old college friends swore by. All the tests said the same thing. Ava's body worked, her throat, her vocal cords, everything physically intact. The silence was not a broken throat so much as a fortress. He spent fortunes, millions, on solutions that never returned her voice. Ava spent her days glued to the glass of her bedroom window, watching street life like a silent movie. She rarely ate, did not play, did not answer. It was as if a part of her had left the house with Sophia. Marcus buried himself in the firm, working late into the night, because coming home meant facing that quiet. Patty, the housekeeper who loved Ava like a daughter, tried everything with a softness only someone who had raised children could manage. Nothing moved the stillness. On the other side of the city, in a neighborhood of worn stoops and cheap laundromats, an old woman named Mrs. Rosa Delgado woke at 4 each morning. White hair twisted into a bun. Hands calloused from tugging a cart through streets, hauling cans and bottles. Her back stooped from years of work and weather. She collected recyclables for a living, strolling through the richest blocks because the cans were clean, the detritus worth the most. Her rent was 3 months late. The landlord had already told her she had 15 days. She had little cash and no family nearby to help. But Rosa carried a secret in her coat pocket, a faded photograph of a small girl named Luz, her granddaughter, taken by illness 3 years earlier. The photo's edges were worn from being held at night. She spoke to it like a prayer. When Rosa took her regular route up the avenue past Marcus Hale's building, the sight of a small child at the second-floor window stopped her breath. The child's gaze was distant, angelic, the same age as her lost Luz. Rosa, without thinking, lifted a hand and gave the smallest wave, the kind of gesture people make to any child on the sidewalk. To her amazement, the child in the window returned the wave. It was the first reaction anyone had seen from Ava in months. From that day on, Rosa made it her ritual to pass by the building every morning at 7 a.m. sharp. And every morning there was Ava, waiting at the window. They greeted each other, a small exchange of hands, a mimed, "Good morning," shouted across marble and iron. A tiny smile, almost invisible, flickered on Ava's face. It was enough to warm Rosa's old heart. Then one morning everything changed. Ava was not in the window. She was outside on the sidewalk, alone, standing at the wrought iron gate. Rosa nearly dropped the battered canvas bag of cans she carried. The child had walked down the flight of steps, across the courtyard, and waited by the gate as if she had planned the journey. When Rosa went close, Ava did something no one else had managed. She reached for Rosa's hand and held it, quiet and simple, like a tether. Marcus saw them from his study. For 2 years there had been nothing. No laughter, no reaching, no handshake. He rushed down the stairwell, almost tripping, heart tearing inside him like a fist. Rosa braced for a rebuke, expecting, as many did, that the wealthy man would shout or call the police. But Marcus, half sobbing, could only say, "You made my daughter smile." He sank to his knees on the icy pavement and cried. People stopped, neighbors leaned from windows. For the first time in 2 years, Marcus felt something he had thought gone forever: hope. Inside the penthouse, under gleaming chandeliers, Rosa sat awkwardly on a sofa while Patty brought tea and tiny cookies. Marcus hovered like a man who didn't know what to do with his own tears. Rosa reached into her coat pocket and produced a fragile little bracelet, handmade, strands of colored beads and dried blossoms tied by a small thread. She explained, haltingly, that she made such trinkets for children on quiet nights to remember the small things. "For you, princess," she said, putting it around Ava's thin wrist. Ava examined it with the concentration of a scientist and then did something even the doctors had not heard in 2 years. She laughed. It rang clear and bright and sudden, a sound that hit Marcus like sunlight and almost made him fall. Patty clutched the banister to steady herself. The sound spilled out into the street like a bell. Ava touched the tiny petals with her fingertips and laughed again, a full, childlike peal. Marcus felt his legs give. He had forgotten that a laugh could reset the world. That morning, 2 worlds that rarely touched sat together in the Hale living room: the wealthy man who thought he could buy solutions, and the old woman who had almost nothing to sell except her patience and her memories. Rosa spoke of her Luz, of how Lucia loved to make bracelets, and how no matter how time eroded grief, the memory of a child's laugh stayed sharp. Marcus told the story of Sophia, the way she loved to hum as she cooked, the way she taught Ava to cut flowers, and how after that terrible afternoon his daughter had sealed herself inside silence. They sat, awkwardly, but they spoke honestly about loss. For the first time, Marcus agreed that his daughter might need something other than money. She might need a bridge. The next morning, Marcus asked Rosa, in a rushed, guilty way, if she might come by the penthouse for coffee and keep Ava company sometimes. He spoke as though offering wages would fix things. "I can pay you," he said without thinking. "$5,000 a month. You could work here, help in the garden, keep her company." Marcus expected Rosa to be grateful, even to leap at the chance. She stiffened. Her jaw tightened. She was not ashamed to need money, but she did not want to be bought like an object. She said quietly, "I do not want to be your employee. I come because she reminds me of my little Luz. Not for pay." She left with the calm dignity of someone who had always earned what she had by stubbornness, not by charity. Marcus, who had lived a life in which checks solved everything, did not understand. Patty watched and shook her head. "You don't get how people like her are," she said. "It's pride. It's dignity. You offer money like you're fixing things. You're not fixing anything. You're making someone feel small." Rosa did not come the next 2 mornings. Ava stood at the window and waited. Then the second day passed. Then the third. Ava's small flame of brightness flickered and went out. She withdrew again, more silent than before. Marcus noticed his own panic rising the same way he did when a stock dropped, sharp and immediate. He called Patty frantic. She did not need the details to know what had happened. "You offended her," she said. "You offered to buy her care. People who survive on the edges of life have to keep their pride. You tried to buy it away. Guilt is a heavy thing." Patty, unable to watch both her employer and the child suffer while pride sat between them, took it upon herself to act. She rode 2 buses into the neighborhood where Rosa lived, down a dirt alley, and knocked on a wooden door. Rosa answered with reddened eyes and a face that had been closer to hunger than to hope in recent weeks. Patty, breathless, said, "Mr. Hale regrets how he spoke. He's desperate. Ava misses you. Will you come back?" Rosa folded her arms, hurt clear in the lines around her mouth. "He treated me like a servant, like something to be purchased," she said at last. "But the child needs me. And I need the child." I am too stubborn to watch her fade because of another person's pride. At the end she sighed, I have 15 days. I have no rent. I don't want pity. But I can't abandon a little girl who reminds me of my lose. The next morning, to everyone's shock, Marcus himself knocked on Rosa's door. He walked into a small room of chipped plywood and threadbare curtains with shoes muddied by neighborhood dust and a coat unbuttoned against the chill. I came to apologize, he said, unguarded. I tried to buy what you gave for free. I didn't mean to insult you. I saw her laugh for the first time in 2 years. I panicked and offered what I knew how to give. I am sorry. He knelt down on the uncarpeted floor, an image that would have been unthinkable in his boardroom. He told her he had paid her back rent, not as a purchase but as a gift he hoped she would accept as a neighbor. Come back, he said, voice raw. Come back not as an employee but as a friend. Ava needs you. Rosa considered him quietly, testing his sincerity with the same patience she used to test a stranger's hand. Her eyes softened. I am not your servant, she said simply. I will come because the child needs me. But we will be companions, not commodities. On the morning Rosa returned, Ava barreled into the garden like a small ship finding harbor. She leapt into Rosa's arms and clung there. For the first time in 2 years, Ava spoke a sound that was unmistakable, a single, fragile word. Grandma, she whispered. Not in perfect cadence, not clear in tone, but the word was there, a tiny, jagged flame in the darkness. They all cried. Marcus, Patricia, and even Rosa, who wiped her own cheeks with the sleeve of her coat as if she could not afford tissues. They took Rosa to the child's therapist, the best Marcus could arrange, and the doctor watched the warmth between them for a full hour, then called Marcus gently into the study. Children sometimes lock pain away, she said. Ava associated her whole family with loss. Someone outside that painful circle, with no claim or demand, can give safety in a way blood sometimes cannot. Rosa is the bridge. Marcus nodded, tears shining. He finally understood that his attempt to fix everything with money had missed the one thing that couldn't be bought, dignity and trust. Rosa visited daily. She made bracelets from beads and small wildflowers. She taught Ava how to plant seeds in the neglected garden, how to feel the dirt between fingers, how even a small green shoot could be coaxed awake with time and care. Ava giggled when water sprayed her dress. She reached for things, made small noises, then words, Nana, Papa, hungry, water. First stray syllables, then short sentences. The house lightened in places Marcus had not noticed needed lightening. He learned to sit at the edge of the garden and watch instead of hovering at the doorway. He learned to listen when Ava said small things and to answer even when they were barely audible. Months passed. The garden bloomed under Rosa's careful hands, and with the garden, so did Ava. The breakthrough came slowly, then all at once. One radiant afternoon, 6 months after the first morning at the gate, they sat together on the stone bench watching bees. Ava turned to Marcus, face open and unfrightened, and said in that exact, astonishing way children do, I love you, Daddy. Marcus folded himself around his daughter and cried until his throat was raw. I'm here, he whispered into her hair. I was always here. Ava looked at him, solemn for a child, and whispered, I was scared you would go like Mama. The words were a blade and a bomb at once. Marcus understood then exactly what his daughter had lived in her mind, the memory of loss that taught her silence would keep out pain. Rosa chose to stay nearby in a modest apartment Marcus rented for her, not as a servant, but as a neighbor and guardian of the garden. She kept her pride. She planted a small plaque near the path, Luz and Sophia Garden, where laughter returned. Her daughter's relatives visited, sometimes they brought food. Ava played with other children, made friends at a small private school Marcus arranged, and slowly constructed the childhood she had been denied. Marcus learned to slow down. He quit late-night deals for early morning park benches. He sat with Ava and let her teach him how to braid little bracelets from memory and dried flowers. The house was no longer a mausoleum, it was a place where grief and joy lived at the same time. On a warm morning months later, Ava saw a young woman in her 20s pushing a battered cart of cans. She toddled up and offered the new woman a bracelet Rosa had taught her to make. "For luck," Ava said solemnly, as if knowing small gifts could alter fate. The young woman took it, surprised, and smiled with a gratitude that was wide as a small miracle. Rosa watched from the kitchen window and felt something settle in her chest. The circle had turned. Love, like a handful of seeds, had been given and then scattered and would grow elsewhere. Marcus never forgot the lesson. Money could fix roofs and rent and bills. Money could buy therapy and tutors and a safer street. But money could not put a voice back in a little girl's mouth. Only time, patience, humility, and the hand of a woman who had lost a child of her own could coax that voice out. He learned to respect people who held their dignity like a shield. He learned to ask rather than to command. And on the porch where the garden had bloomed, people sometimes saw Marcus and Rosa laughing together over a watering can, a sight that once would have seemed impossible. The miracle, if one may call it that, was not in the bracelet or in any single gesture. It was in the small, daily work of showing up. In the unglamorous continuity of a woman who woke at 4 in the morning to collect cans, and in a rich man who, at last, understood his limits. It was in the quiet kindness of a stranger whose grief made her gentle in the place where a child's grief needed gentleness most. And one bright afternoon, as bees buzzed and the small plaque glinted, Ava ran into the street to show the young can collector what she had painted on a pebble, a sun and 2 tiny stick figures holding hands. The young woman laughed and tucked the pebble into her pocket. Rosa watched and smiled, because she knew the hardest work, the work of keeping someone alive inside their body, had been done not by money, but by the steady beating of a human heart willing to return. Which part of this story touched you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to read them. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, so you won't miss any of our next emotional stories.